This is Ceilings and Roofs, Episode 3. We're going to be going over the slope arrow, how you can use it in kind of different sort of ways, and then also how to connect two different roofs to one another. So I've got this model set up here. It's kind of a similar one from what we've had from the past two episodes. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to eliminate this little bump out here and then get rid of this this gable. So if I edit the footprint here, I'm going to get rid of actually these couple lines here, and then we'll just trim this up and get a straight shot all the way across there. So I'm not going to worry about that. And then we're going to get rid of these and go ahead and trim that up as well. Okay, so now that we've got, and I'll get rid of the ceiling, we're not going to deal with those right now. So now that I've got this this straight kind of run across here, if we've got a situation like this that maybe we do want a gable in here, but we don't actually want it to bump out how we did before. We still want that gable look, but we want the kind of eave to run across and then immediately take off into the gable and then continue into the eave on the other side. What we need to use is the slope arrow tool, and how we'll use that is we'll go in and we'll say, okay, we're going to edit the footprint of this roof, and we've got this line here that we want to break up into multiple kind of segments here. We're going to have a straight segment. We're going to have a kind of the gable segment, and then we're going to have the other straight segment over here, the kind of slope defined segment. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use this split element tool, and we'll say we'll come in 13 feet on that side, and we'll come in 13 feet on that side. So now you can see I've got these three line segments here. All three of them are defining slope right now, and I'm actually going to delete the one in the middle, and I'm going to come in and draw two new lines. So that entire thing is going to be 20-foot 8, so I'm going to draw a 10-foot 4 segment and then a second 10-foot 4 segment. And I'm going to turn off define slope for those. So what I've got is I've got a define slope area here and here. If I were to just hit the check mark here, it's going to create the exact same roof I had before. It's just going to create a standard hip there and say, okay, we're defining slope here, we're defining slope here, these are all in line, great, there's nothing telling me to do anything other than that. But what we can do is come up here to this slope arrow tool, and when we click on that, we can draw this arrow. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to draw the slope arrow from the end of this point to the end of that line we drew, and then we're going to draw another one going the other direction. So what we're doing is we're telling it, okay, this is defining a slope this direction, this is defining a slope this direction, but from the tail of this arrow to the head is defining the slope. The tail of this one to the head is defining the slope this direction. So I can determine what this is going to be by two different methods. I can either say the height at the tail, so I can say, all right, from the tail end of this to the head of this, the difference is 10 feet. So I could say the height offset here, I've got it set at 0 foot 0 because I want it to be perfectly in line with this. I could jump it up, and all of a sudden it will transition from being even here to a foot above it starts to take off. I don't want it to be 10 feet above. Maybe I know exactly what the height I want to be is. If I know the difference between my eave height and then my ridge height, and I want this gable to line up perfectly with it, I can go ahead and punch in what that difference is, and it'll automatically calculate the slope there. Or I can come in and say, I don't want to deal with that. I'm just going to say it's the slope, and the rest of my roof is all at 812. So I'm going to just say that this is an 812 as well. So we'll say that's an 812, and we'll go ahead and do the exact same thing on this side and say that that's an 812. So now we've defined these two line segments as separate. And when we hit our check mark, I won't worry about that right now. Now when we go in, we get the look that we're after. We've used this slope arrow to define a new kind of sloping element to it without the kind of bump out or anything there. So the slope arrow can be used in that method where if you want to keep something in line, and it seems like in sketch mode you need to keep that line continuous all the way across, you can use the slope arrow to start to define pieces of that line and get the look that you're after. So then beyond that, on this other side, I've got a kind of not a gable, a dormer sticking out here, this kind of condition. So if I look at this little dormer here, I could do this one of two ways. I could come in and say I want to use a roof by extrusion, where I'll say, okay, I want to pick a plane, I'm going to use that plane, okay, that's fine, and I can draw basically a just kind of outline of where I want the roof to be, just like that, and hit a check mark, and then it's going to all of a sudden draw that roof in below it. To me, I don't know if other people have encountered this, but to me it would make more sense to me to draw by extrusion where the line is actually the bottom of the roof and then it extends above it. Most of the time I'm using my walls as kind of a template there, and then it's just more of a hassle to try to, okay, how far up do I need to move this so that this intersects here and there and all of that. If I were to draw this sketch and this was the bottom and then all of a sudden the roof extended up, that would make more sense to me, but for whatever reason they have it so that this is the top of it. But that's one way that we could go about doing this, or we could just go ahead and do it by footprint, same as the other ones. And we'll say we'll go roof by footprint. We're going to use a 2-foot overhang on these, and we'll come around, and then I'm just going to cap off the back of this. And I'm actually going to pull this in a little bit, just so we've got a little bit of extra there. And I'm going to say these two aren't defining slope. I'm just going to put a little gable on this. And both of these will make these 8/12 so that they match the pitch of the rest of the roof. So now we'll hit our check mark. I'm not going to worry about that. We'll go to our south view, and we can kind of move this up and into place where we want it. So maybe we see that, okay, we've got a little bit of an issue there, so let's actually move this down. Maybe we bring it down like 6 inches or something like that. Okay, so we've got this roof here, but we've got some issues. We don't have this attaching to the roof, and maybe we don't want to have to figure out exactly how to draw in that back little caret to make this connect perfectly. So what we can do is we can come in, and up here is join unjoin roof. And if I select that and select the edge of this roof and then the plane of this one, it'll automatically resolve that and jump it back and connect the two of those together. So that little tool can be handy when you're dealing with this sort of stuff, because otherwise you've got to figure out exactly where this point ends up lying and where these points end up lying so that you can draw that in there, and that can be a bit of a hassle. So just being able to draw a kind of rectangle and then use that tool to resolve the rest of it can be really handy. So that's two additional tools for roofs, the slope arrow and then the join roof tool.